is process costing? With process costing, companies determine item cost by tracking the cost of each stage in the production process instead of tracking cost for each individual item. After adding up the cost of all the steps in the process, they divide the total cost by the number of items. This is called the cost per unit. For example, a paper company might track the cost of each stage in the process of turning wood pulp into reams of paper, then divide the total cost by the number of reams to get the cost per ream. So, what is process costing? Process costing is a method of costing applied to industries where material has to pass through many processes before being converted into a finished product. Each process is treated as cost center. The cost of each process is accumulated and per unit cost is determined. The formula could be cost per unit of each process is equal to cost of output in the process divided by normal number of units in the process. In this method, the output of first process work as the raw material of the second process and output of the second process works as the raw material of a third process until the product is finally completed. In this manner, the raw material passes through various processes till it reaches the last process where the entire process is completed and the product is made ready for sale. This method is used in the manufacture of chemical products, soap, vegetable oil, paints, varnishes, etc., where the production is continuous and the product has to pass from one process to another. What are the features of process costing? First is production is continuous. The production is continuous and the end product is the result of a sequence of process. Each plant is divided into separate process centers and each process center processes a single product. Second is product is homogeneous. In this, only one type of product is produced and the units produced are identical and standardized. The units of one process are indistinguishable from each other, although the units of one process may differ from the units of other process. The units of A process may differ from the units of B process, but the units of process A will be similar to each other. Next is, it simply means the product is the units produced are identically to each other, they are not different. The process units from one process to another process may differ from each other. For example, units of process A may differ from units in process B because they might be on a different process. So they all together may look very different. But the units in process A altogether are all similar units or homogeneous units. Finished products of one act as a raw material for the next. The sequence for process in process costing, the sequence for processing the product is predetermined and pre-decided, and setup is pre-planned in advance that how the product will go from one process to another. Next is the sequence of operation for processing the product is specific and predetermined. Also, to complete the production work, the sequence for the product is clearly defined. Means if the one person has to produce a car, the sequence will be pre-decided from where in which process the spare parts will be fixed, in which process the seats will be assembled, in which process the body will be put on the entire assembled part, and in which process there will be covering, and in which process there will be washing, and finally showroom delivery. So this is the where the sequence of process is clearly defined in case of process costing. Large scale. Production is done on large scale in case of process costing. The cost per unit of the production is average cost, which is determined by dividing the total cost of production by total units of production. And in each process, there is certain quantity of loss. There is certain quantity of loss which cannot be eliminated. This loss is also called as abnormal loss. This loss is due to the nature of raw material, that for example loss in weight, vaporization, chemical reaction. This loss is borne by good units. It is also possible to obtain joint product or byproduct from the use of raw material or production technology. Chances of abnormal loss or abnormal gain may also be there, which are dealt separately in process costing. Inter-process profit are also kept in consideration when output is transferred to next process at market price. The concept of equivalent production is also recognized in process accounts. That is, those units which are at the stage of work in progress are made equivalent to completed units. Now, next is industries where process costing is applied. It can be manufacturing industries like iron, steel, cement, paper, rubber, etc. It can be chemical industries like perfume, soap, oils, medicines, etc. It can be mining industry, mineral oil, coal, sulfur, gold, iron, zinc, etc. Public utility works, electricity generation and distribution, water, gas supply, etc. These are the industries where process costing can be applied. Now, people always wonder that what is the basic difference between process costing and job costing. We all know job costing is a costing where the production is carried on against a specific order. But in case of process costing, production is divided into several units and the units are reformed, and it is not necessary that the production is carried on against a specified order. In job costing, one job is not related to another job. For example, one order can be for producing 500 units of pair of shoes. Another order can be for producing 1000 units of pair of shoes. But in case of process costing, all the stages are related to each other. For example, we have taken in case of car, assembling of one stage of assembling of one parts is directly related to the assembling of other parts. Even one process is missed, then whole production process will be hampered. So therefore, in process costing, one process is totally related to another process and they are divided into sequences. This is a theory part. Now let us understand this particular concept with the help of numerical. For example, process A. A product passes through processes, process A, process B, and process C. To completion, the product of commodity was 1000 ton. The costs are as follows. Now, we have three processes. We know process A, process B, and process C. How to solve it? First of all, we will make format of process A, particulars, then cost per unit, Then we have total cost. Next is for next side, it is cost per unit, and then total cost. Now we all know there are two sides in process costing. First is debit side and another one is credit side. On debit side, all expenses are debited to the process, generally material, labor, manufacturing expenses, abnormal gain and opening balance. Sorry. And on the credit side, we have process loss. All the items are shown in the credit side are your process loss, byproduct and finished product. When entire units produced in a process are sent to the next process, those entire units are shown in credit side. So let's start with the debit side. On the debit side, we have material. Material for is 3000, and we know number of units are produced are 1000, that will be rupees 3. Next is labor. Labor is 1500. Number of units produced are 1.5. Next is, you can write 2 in front of it, to material, to material, to labor, and to manufacturing expenses. Manufacturing expenses are 1500. Then it is 1.5. Total cost is 6000, and total cost per ton is 6.0 per unit. Now we will move on to the credit side. We all know total cost is 6000. We will carry on this total cost to the credit side, and which will be our by process output. It will be shown by process output. By process output, it's 6000, and its cost per unit, we all know it's 6. So it is like output transferred to process A, sorry, B. Output this is how we, so this is one process which is being complete. As you can see, on debit side we have shown to material, to labor, to manufacturing expenses, and on the credit side we have shown by process output the number of units which have been transferred in process B. Now next is process B. Now particulars. Again, we will follow the same format, but the basic difference will be, first of all, we will transfer this particular process output, which will be from process A, which will be transferred to process B by to process A, 6,000, and cost per unit is 6. Next is to material, labor, and manufacturing expenses. Similarly, we will record them over here. Material is 1500 again in the question, and cost per unit will be again divided by 1000 units. 1.5. Next is, I think there is certain, okay. Then labor we know it's 3000 in process B. So we will copy it over here. Then it will be rupees 3. Next is manufacturing expenses is process B. It's 4.50. Next is, now we will do the total of all these expenses. We will get 15,000 total, and cost per unit will be rupees 15 again. Then by process C, by process C, this output will be transferred to process C account, and total cost we have all calculated 15,000, and cost per unit will be 15. Okay. Now let's move on to this. These were all the expenses of process B. Let's move on to process C. Process C, we will make format in the same manner. There's no difference. Now this will be transferred like to process C. Sorry, it will be to process B, because amount is process B over here is 15,000. This output will be transferred in process B, 15,000. Cost per unit is 15. Next is, we will copy the same kind of expenses which are being mentioned. Material, which is being mentioned as 1500. It is again 1.5 cost per unit. Next is labor, 5250. 5250 is the total cost, then the cost per unit is 5.25. Next is, it is labor. forgot to mention. Next is manufacturing expenses. To manufacturing expenses. Manufacturing expenses in process C, it's given 5250 again, and price per unit will be 5.25. But as we can see, first of all, we will do the total. And price per unit will be 27. Next is, we all know this is the last process. So it will be by finished stock account. Finished stock is 27,000. 27. So it will be, let's make it more clear. 27,000 we will show in the last column to complete the format. So by finished stock account, we have 27,000. We are not transferring this 27,000 because there is no, this is the last process. And in this last process, we are assuming that the production of a product is complete. Now, we will, if there is any concept left to be understood, let me brief you again regarding this question. A product passes through three processes, process A, process B, and process C to completion. The product of the commodity was 1000 ton. The costs were as follows. Material, labor, manufacturing, and they have been specified like process A, process B, and process C. Now, first of all, we will take process A. First of all, we should be clear with the format. Okay, this is a debit side and this is a credit side. In debit side, we record all the expenses, and in the credit side, we record all the process output transferred and finished stock account. Now, we will record all the expenses, labor and manufacturing and material which have been given in the question total, and then for getting cost per unit we will divide them by 1000 units. For 3000 cost per unit will be 3, for 1500 cost per unit will be 1.5, for 1500 again cost per unit will be 1.5. The total of the cost is 6000, and we will forward this 6000 in process in the credit side, 6000 and total. So let's copy it in the last column to complete the format. Now this 6000 will become a opening balance in process B, where it is, yes, and we will write process A because it has been being transferred from process A. Now all the expenses will be noticed at is material, labor, manufacturing, and we will calculate the cost per unit like 1500 for 1000 divided by 1000, 1.5, 3000 divided by 1000 with 3, 4500 divided by 1000 will give you 4.5 and so on. Now this total of 15,000 will be transferred to process C, that is and by the name process B on the debit side to process B, and we will record all the expenses in the same manner as we have recorded in the previous processes. For 15,000 is the total cost which has been transferred from process B. Cost per unit will be 50, 1500, 5250, 5250 again, and total is 27,000. Now this is your finished stock account, 27,000. 27,000 is your final cost because this was the final last process, and therefore the this particular product is complete, and total cost of the product we have arrived is 27,000, and it will be 27 per unit. So this is how we solve the process cost numerically. And one thing, let us discuss. I want to show you all the expenses like material, labor, and manufacturing expenses. For each process, a separate account is opened. All the expenses are debited to the process. Generally, there are processes like material, labor, direct expenses, indirect expenses, abnormal gains, and opening balance. Material, labor, and direct expenses, we all know it is the material is the basic material related to production, which is shown in the first process. This material is shown as its cost. Similarly, labor in each process work is performed by separate workers. The wages paid to these workers should be debited to the process to which the workers are functioning upon. Similarly, direct expenses, all those expenses which are exclusively incurred for a respective process are debited to the process account as direct expenses. Indirect expenses, all those which are jointly concerned with various processes are called indirect expenses, and these expenses are distributed to individual process on some suitable basis. Similarly, if there is abnormal gain, it is shown in the debit side of process account. What is the abnormal gain? If any process, the actual production is more than the normal production, then excessive production over normal production is termed as abnormal gain. That means when there is actual production is more than the normal production, then excessive production over normal production is termed as abnormal gain, and it is shown in the debit side of process account. The cost and quantity of abnormal gain is debited to the concerned process account where it has occurred. Then there is opening balance in the debit side, which we have not shown. If there is opening stock of any process in the current year, its quantity and value both are debited to the concerned process. Similarly, on the credit side, we show process loss. In order to make a finished product, the raw material has to pass through various processes. It is possible that in the process during the production, some material may be lost or damaged due to inherent of the nature of the process. To say, therefore, a detailed production of these losses are given, are shown in the credit side of process account. So it can be your loss can be your byproduct. Byproduct is like if any process a byproduct is obtained automatically or incidentally, then the concerned process account is created by the value of byproduct. Next is finished product. The output received after the completion of individual process is the finished product of the concerned process account, but for the next process it is in the form of raw material. On these material, after the last process is complete, then only the finished product is achieved. In each process, the quantity produced is shown in different ways. So when entire units produced in a process are sent to the next process, and when a part of output is transferred to next process and a part is retained. When entire units, if the entire output is transferred to the next process, then it is credited with the entire quantity and cost of production to the process where it was produced. When a part of output is transferred to next process and a part is retained, when some part of the output is retained and sent to warehouse, whereas the remaining part is sent to the next process, then the cost of both the transfers and their quantity will be credited to the process account where it was produced. So this was all about process costing, and I hope by now you must be clearly thorough that about the both numerical and practical aspects of process costing. Thank you for attending the session.